Tell me what the hell are you scared of when in the end the only
Where's the love? Right here on this podcast. Welcome to Love Drops, where your hosts and One Love ambassadors, Charles and Diane, will share love, hope, and inspirational topics taken from their journey and world events. We will also include on location recordings and special pop up guests from cool places all around the world. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
whether big or small, love never fails. Oh, love it conquers all. Love never fails.
So, welcome to another episode of Love Drop Podcast. And I am so excited because we're doing our first recording from the city of love. That's right, y'all. We in Paris, Paris, France, and we are elated. Our guest is so appropriate for just our journey, where we're at, and all of that. So, let's see, met Charles through a mutual contact, Brian Bashad, shout out. And we spoke with Charles from Lisbon. And now we have him on the show because his story is just one that will just keep you captivated and just glued to your seat. And yeah, so buckle up, y'all. Enjoy the ride. And Charles.
Yes, you will definitely enjoy this. And out of all the names in the world, his name is Charles. I won't go into his last name. I don't want to mess it up. He will tell you more about that. And when you talk about travel and being there, Charles is there. I won't go into his background. He will tell you about that. And without further ado, Charles, the mic is yours.
Oh, wow. What a very joyful and enjoyable introduction and welcome. Thank you so much, Charles and Diane, for having me on your podcast. It is such a joy to join you and share my story with your audience as well. So just maybe a little bit about me. My name is Charles Achampong. As Charles was saying, we both share a similar name, great first name. And Achampong is from Ghana in West Africa. So I am a Canadian born in Ottawa, now currently living in Toronto with Ghanaian roots, which is based in West Africa, where my parents are currently residing. I've got two younger siblings, so I am, I guess, for all intents and purposes, considered sometimes to be the mean older brother. But I've grown out of that over time. I am a proud husband to a beautiful wife named Janice. We've got two fantastic and adorable girls who are 11 and 8. My 11-year-old is Cassia, and 8-year-old is Ayana. And again, I'm based in Toronto. It's been a remarkable journey. It's been fascinating to be able to sort of think back what we've done over the last couple of years. But my background, just very quickly, I've spent over the last 2 decades working in the public, private, not-for-profit, and philanthropic sectors in Canada and internationally as well, working for a wide variety of organizations, whether it be the Vancouver Olympics, to working in private industry with banks, to philanthropic organizations like the Ontario Trillium Foundation. Really, my career has really focused on meaningful change and community impact. And about 10 years ago, my wife and I hatched this wild plan about a decade ago, before kids were even in the picture, about plotting and saving towards this family sabbatical. And we finally pulled the trigger earlier this year, and we turned that decade-old dream into a reality. And we proved that sometimes the best plans are the ones that you let simmer. And we just returned back from our amazing and enthralling trip around the world.
Wow. Talk about synchronicity. So much synchronicity in what you said. First of all, I'm the oldest of 3. So yes, Charles, I am the mean big sister. Well, not anymore, but I was formerly known as the mean big sister. And then the second thing is I did not know that your dream had also simmered for a decade. So Charles and I, we simmered for a decade to get to Paris, France. That was a decade ago that we
Wow.
we compiled that, the journey, and we really thought we were leaving immediately. And so, right. But now here we are both a decade later
Wow.
living and lived our dreams, which goes so well with the topic of the show today because it is permission to
Yes.
live your dreams. So, listeners, you are taking this from people who have just recently lived his dream, that be Charles and his family, and Charles and Diane are currently living their dream. And like we both said, it was about a decade, but it's happening. It's happening.
And it will all happen when it's time for it to happen. We had our plans, but our plans were much larger than what we were planning. We had signs on our car that we were going to sell our car, giving away things, doing everything that we knew. We just had to sit still and know that He is God. And it happened when it was supposed to happen. Yeah, we were amazed ourselves, but it did happen. Decades ago, we planned it, and here it is, reality. We're living that dream.
Well, I'm not going to say we sat still because we went across the US several times in that 10 years and man, have met so many people and built so many villages. We have done so many, wrote books. I've written two, Charles written one. So no, not necessarily sitting still, but we did simmer.
Yeah, I like that one better. We did simmer.
Well,
Sitting still, oh, well, the word just came.
Well, Charles, so with all of that, tell us about your journey. Tell us
Mm.
about your journey. Take us there.
Mm. I'm thinking about and reflecting on what you've said around living your dream and the fact that we had the opportunity to take our two young girls on a trip around the world for a 7-month period and how we had lived our dream. I still feel like I'm living my dream, right? And so this idea that you said earlier about the permission to live your dream, dreams require action, right? They're not just passive wishes in my mind. They demand a commitment and effort, and sometimes they require sacrifice, right? And I think for us, what we learned in terms of our trip was the fact that the true challenge was not in terms of dreaming big, but more about waking up each day ready to pursue our dream, right? And the fact that everybody's journey is unique, everyone's dream is unique. There's no right way or wrong way to pursue them. And I think what matters most is being able to stay true to your own vision and not letting comparison or doubt get in your way. And so, if anything, I feel that everyone's individual dream is a reflection of who you are, what excites you, what scares you, what you deeply care about, right? So I think all those things are really what defines you in terms of your permission to dream. Our dream, as you talked about, 10 years, something that we let simmer, really the defining moment in terms of how we made this trip around the world happen. It was 10 plus years ago. So my wife and I had ventured off on our honeymoon to Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. So we had taken in the sights, and for us, I think the moments really hit my spouse, Janice, standing at the feet of the Christ the Redeemer statue. So there's this major statue on very high vantage point in Rio de Janeiro. We saw this elderly man with an oxygen tank in tow, slowly making up his way up the escalator to take the stairs and take in the view. And later that evening over dinner, Janice and I had reflected on what we'd witnessed. And she said that she would love to be able to take our future kids on this trip around the world, adding that we shouldn't wait until it's too late. So, of course, we're on our honeymoon. My first reaction is she crazy? Is she? I mean, we haven't even. We were newlyweds, right? And we're enjoying Rio de Janeiro, and we're not even finished paying for that particular trip. And here we are thinking about going on a global adventure with these hypothetical kids that that we don't even have yet, right? But I think deep down inside, I realized that she was onto something, right? The moment she planted that seed in that moment that, and if anything, travel wasn't something, it was something that really kind of brought us together. It's something that it brought us together as a couple, and it's something that we wanted to share with our eventual family. So looking back, I'm glad that she didn't let my reaction and sort of like the practicalities of the moment sort of overshadow this dream of being able to take our kids on a trip around the world. And so we went through a wide variety of countries. We took 7 months off. We traveled from Toronto west to Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, Thailand, the Philippines, through to South Africa, to Ghana to see my parents, to Jordan and Albania, the UK, before we ended up going home. And so we tried to structure it such that we spent as much time and even though as few places as possible, but really wanted to make sure that we delved in deep and really enjoyed this experience that we had together as a family.
Wow. I love how Janice planted that seed. And I love your transparency in saying, what, is she crazy?
Oh, yes.
For a couple of reasons. Again, there's so much synchronicity that is revealing itself in our conversation right now, in this conversation right now. One, Charles and I came together over travel because when we met, Charles was living in Michigan. I was living in Southern California. Another thing is when it came, because it pretty much downloaded to me, France was really my big, big magical dream. Okay. So it came to me and downloaded to me. So we're living in Pasadena, California. And, we're talking, we're going to France. We're going to go and live in France for, for a while and blah, blah, blah. And I am so excited. And Charles is like, yeah, what she said. So I think really he probably shared your reaction. Like, is this girl crazy? But I wasn't crazy, and Janice wasn't crazy. We just felt something. We just believed that it could happen. We saw it, like in our soul, in our mind. We had already cast it out there. So I mean, the net had been cast, right? And so, it's just, I think it's really, really amazing that even though you guys, you Charleses, had to come on board, that when you did, and, you and Janice and Charles and I, we, started working towards it, we were unstoppable. We are unstoppable. And that is something to definitely, consider, because moving forward, no matter what she says or I say, you be like, well, yeah, we did go around the world. Well, yeah, we did go to, so you will always have that to bounce off of.
Yeah, I know a lot of our local travels throughout the United States. I question those from state to state, the where, the hows. Then later I say, well, I'm not going to question it. And we did it. How? I don't know, but it happened. Other things just happen. You name the country and it just happened. So I stopped questioning, pulled in my hows, and it just materialized. And here we are in Paris, France. Who would have thought?
Yeah.
I completely agree with what you both said. And I think about our why for the trip, and so there's the how you're going to do it, and then there's the why. And so when I think about our why for the trip, once I got over the how, it was really to break free from the autopilot of daily life and sort of rediscover for us what truly matters for us as individuals and also for us as a family. And so the biggest thing was to really confront the unknown, to grow in sort of this discomfort, to know that we're going to go through this growth period of living life outside of our comfort zones in terms of what we're typically used to. I think it was also to create, our kids were 7, or now they're 8 and 11, but they were 7 and 10 when we went on our journey, kicked off our journey earlier this year in January 2024. And it was really to you know that there's a short period of time, kids will then, of course, change and evolve as we all do as individuals, but you know that there's a period of time where your kids are going to still gravitate towards you. And as they get older and become teenagers, they'll gravitate more towards their friends and pursue their own hobbies and, sort of create their own identity. And so we really wanted to intentionally create moments of connection and even foster more curiosity amongst the kids so that, they could things that couldn't easily happen within the routines of being at home in our day-to-day life. And I guess the other thing I would say too is the fact that even though we went on a trip around the world, the thing that for me sort of stood out was the fact that we don't need, and people don't need a passport to pause, right? The journey gave us sort of this profound perspective of how stepping away can bring clarity and to see how busy we are in our lives. But there are so many ways that you can figure out what your why is. And for us, that was the why. Yes, we wanted to pursue this opportunity as a family and to travel, but it just reminded me that we need to look for ways to find sort of this permission to dream and to find time for ourselves, sort of everyday life as a family. So those are some of the things that I think about when I think about hearing your journey and your story and thinking about the why for our trip as well.
Wow. When you said the why, it just took me back to our why. And yes, it's to experience Paris. It's to meet new people. Yes, it's to spread love. But the biggest why is to create a legacy for our children and our grandchildren. Our children are all adults. Shout out to the six pack. And then our grandchildren are, they're growing. And shout out to the mini six pack. Our grandkids are they're the light of our eyes, our heart, everything. They inspire us. They give us that, on those days when it's a little challenging, because there's challenging days on any journey, right?
Of course.
But say something or just do something and just remind you why you're doing it. They remind you. So because we did, they can. And that is our why. That's our why.
I love that.
They asked us a lot of questions about that, and they cover those. Why? Aren't you comfortable where you're at? Why don't you stay there?
Yes.
We are comfortable, but we're finding other places to go, things to do, and they're wanting to do them also.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we're seeing it. We're seeing it in their actions and in their behaviors. It's like you said, if you can just plant the seed, and in planting the seed, our kids, they are paying attention to what we do, not what we say. So before we started, the podcast, I think I mentioned to you, I'm not going to say it if I'm not going to do it. And if I say it, I'm doing it. If I say it, I'm doing it. I'm doing it because I know I have eyes on me. And when I say eyes on me, I'm not talking about other people. I'm talking about my mini six pack, because the best way I can show them kindness is to be kind. The best way that I can show them love is to be love. The best way that I can show them that they can do anything is for them to see me do anything. So they know that they can, no matter what anybody tells them, they are going to stand strong in the knowing. Yes, I can. My Nana did. Oh yeah. I can. Yeah, I can go to Paris. I can go. I can travel. Yeah, I can do that. Yeah.
Yeah, that living by example. And they constantly bring it back to us. They say, you said, and you are doing.
Oh, yeah.
Can I do that? Yes, you can.
Oh, yeah.
Who said you can't? You can do anything you want to do. They say, oh, okay. And it gravitates. We're planting dynamic seeds, and we're nourishing them as well in all of our conversations with them.
Yeah. So that leads to your two daughters. I'm sure there were so many conversations and things. So what are some really cool memorable things that you can share?
Yeah, I want to be as transparent as possible because, as you said earlier, it's not all rainbows and unicorns. Things don't always go perfectly when you travel yet, or even if when you're at home in your day-to-day routine. So I recall about a year ago, just prior to us leaving on the trip, my spouse and I, Janice and I, had agreed that we would keep the trip a secret. We would surprise the kids with it. In my mind, I had envisioned how they were going to react when we would tell them. And it was the complete opposite of what I envisioned. I thought they would be excited and jumping off the walls. We're going on a trip around the world. My oldest, Cassia, was graduating from elementary school and going to middle school, intermediate school, and she would be missing out on her graduation. And so for me, this is one of many graduations. You think of there's a graduation from preschool and kindergarten and elementary school. I thought this was just one of many, graduations. And we tend to give, we recognize and celebrate everything nowadays than maybe compared to in the past, right? And so in my mind, it almost dilutes the experience. But she was very upset. She was upset the fact that we hadn't spoken to her about it, that it was a fait accompli, that the decision had already been made. And then there's my youngest daughter who was asking me things like, who is going to look after the house? Am I going to be missing school? What's going to happen? I mean, I wouldn't have expected all these sort of life-changing related questions and sort of practical related questions coming from my youngest daughter. So that was a big surprise for me as well. So it started out roughly. The first 6 to 8 weeks, we were in a bit of a funk in terms of missing our friends at home, missing, the routine. The kids had a set routine and they were happy with their routine. Kids love their routine, right? And so at least mine do. And so it wasn't until maybe 6 weeks into the trip that the light switched and they realized and recognized what was going on and how unique of a trip this was. I think part of it was the fact that every so often, maybe once every several weeks, they would call back. I was reluctant to do this at first, but they would call and chat with their friends because I felt that if we were going to be speaking to their friends, then it was just going to perpetuate the same challenge and problem that they had about missing home. But I would find that when they would share what we had done over the last couple of weeks or what we had done over that day, hearing some of the insights and details of our trip and hearing from their perspective about what they would describe as material, things that stood out to them, I would always be shocked and surprised. And what was funny was that they would share something that we had done, and then you would see their friends react and say, oh, well, here are the things that you've missed at home. There was a new chocolate bar at the candy store, or there's all these things that were happening that they realized, oh, we're not missing much from home. Like life continues on, but this is so much more exciting than all the sort of material or non-important things that our friends are telling us that are important to us as well. So I think over time that really improved and they began to see how much of a unique and enjoyable experience it was. In terms of the kids themselves and the experience, like I think about the before, the during, and the after. So I think those are sort of the early days. But before, it was kind of tenuous in the fact that they were a bit disappointed and didn't have that same sort of excitement and enthusiasm that I was expecting them to have. I was projecting my excitement on them, which didn't materialize. I think about the time during, Ayana, my youngest, had a very close near drowning experience swimming in a friend's pool. And now I see her swimming in, towards as we're traveling and fearlessly swimming in oceans around the world and not a care in the world. It's almost a testament to kids, sort of this resilience that children have and the ability to conquer their fears, right? And watching her swim so effortlessly in the sea and in the ocean. I think about my daughter, Cassia, even though those first 4 to 6 weeks were challenging, I look at the way she is now when we've returned back from the trip. They have both changed, there's no doubt about it, but to see the number of activities that she's engaged in, to see the confidence that she has in herself, she is engaged in far more activities since school started in September over the last couple of months than she did in her entire tenure in elementary school. Like it's this newfound confidence in trying things and exploring. She came home one day and said she wanted to compete in cross-country running. I was like, oh, wow, this is sure, no problem. We don't have, my spouse and I have never done cross-country running, long-distance running. And it, by itself, it seems pretty innocuous. It's great that she's doing this, but I think the fact that she has decided to voluntarily put up her hand to try things that we're not asking her to try is the thing for me that really just kind of got to me. Even watching her at the compete, I became very emotional. She made it all the way to the city final. her old gym teacher from elementary school was saying, Cassia, you've never expressed interest in this sport, and here you are in the city final. It was just more amazing how she, I think, and sort of impressed and sort of really shocked herself about the ability of being able to try something and fail, but try something on her own volition, you know? And so I think those are the things that really stay with us. I think about the magical moments that they experience, like kayaking with the dolphins in Australia, you know, or in Wadi Rum in Jordan, being able to be in the Arabian desert, sleeping in a cave under the desert and seeing the stars in the sky. You know, I'm amazed at how our daughters have grown, not just physically. My wife is actually taller than I am. She's about 6'1", 6'2", so the kids are actually naturally tall as well. And so how they've grown physically, but also in confidence and their adaptability throughout the journey. So I feel like they left as hesitant travelers, unsure about missing school, to sort of these young adventurers who are now embracing new cultures, foods, and experiences as well. So there's been a remarkable change in their character and in their person as well.
Wow, that is amazing.
Phenomenal.
I just want to add, bravo and kudos to you and Janice for forging ahead. Bravo for holding it down in the difficult moments, because as beautiful as a journey may be, as beautiful as a butterfly may be, but the transformation, baby, from a caterpillar to a butterfly is no joke. It's not cute, it's not beautiful, but in the end, right? So the fact that you guys held it down and was like, okay, didn't expect this reaction, but we're going. Okay, we are dealing with some funky attitudes here, but we still ahead, right? That
Exactly.
in itself gets kudos, bravo, and applause, because that speaks, right, to the resilience. It speaks to the consistency. It speaks to the firmness, the commitment on your part. Because you could have said, wait, what? Well, the heck with this, you know, or but you were the governors of that ship, and you kept it tight, even in the midst of the waves of attitudes.
You know, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Diane. You know, I'm very grateful, because the thought did cross our minds as we were traveling that, you know, maybe this is not going to work out. You know, at the point, you know, my oldest daughter, maybe we should just put her on a one-way trip back home to their grandparents, and then we'll continue on ourselves, because we sacrificed a lot financially and, you know, everything else in between to be able to make this happen. And these kids are not being grateful. And my wife has more patience than Job. It's just, you know, she it's okay. They're kids. This is a lot for them to take in. It's a lot for all of us to take in, right? We don't all often spend the amount of time that we're spending together, you know, as we go through this process all over the next 7 or 8 months. And so she said, you just be patient, give them space, let them vent, very patient that way. And you think that for us, I think one of the things that we learned was the fact that we didn't need to necessarily be, sort of as a tactical example, we didn't all necessarily need to be a pack of four that traveled everywhere. This idea of coming, this sort of mini family travel hack of dividing and conquering, I taking $1, she taking $1, so we can go each do our own journey. So there wasn't that level of competition playing us off each other as kids typically do with their parents, the sibling rivalry. Like once it's me and, you know, Cassie, or me and Diana, you know, or vice versa with Janice, it means that they're with you for that day, or you go and experience the day, and we let them program. What is it that you want to do today? Let me ask for your feedback and insight and suggestions. What do you want to, you've done your research, you know, we're coming to this particular place. What do you want to explore? Well, I want to go to the library. We go to the library, hang out for the day. And of course, in my mind, I'm thinking all these things we should be doing, but let me ask you, what is it that you want to do? And let me spend some one-on-one time with you so I can get a chance to engage with you, ask you questions. We can have fun, you know, daddy and you. And so that made a significant difference. And allowing them. So then when we came back later again in the evening, or when we caught up over dinner, there was so much that we could share of what we did and what we learned, and they loved that. It was that sense of engagement there as well. So that helped out a significant amount.
I love that. I love that.
Yes, and by allowing them to develop, to continue to grow and develop their own individual personalities. And as you
Exactly.
guys recognize that, you nourished it.
Yes.
Saying, wow, I didn't see that coming. But
Yes.
look at the seeds that you planted. And it's growing and growing, and they greatly appreciate that.
Oh yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. I'm
I think
sure
so.
I mean, it
Yes.
sounds like just life changing. And what you gave to your daughters, okay, is bigger than
Mm,
any materialistic thing
mm,
that you could name. Anything. You gave them time. You
mm,
gave them the world, literally. You gave them experiences to just help them to navigate, right? To become more adventurous. As you see, you have a daughter now that wants to do cross country running. I mean, right, exactly, because she knows that she can. She,
mm,
she knows that she can. And this is huge. You afforded them the opportunity to
mm,
raise their
mm,
stakes in life.
mm,
So if
mm.
people come and it's too substandard, they're not going to settle because they're with their parents, you know? So it's just like,
Yes.
not impressed with that. No, great for the new Wonka chocolate bar, but I
Exactly.
slept in a
Yes.
cave. I swam in the ocean, you know? So right. So it raises those vibrations and it gives them something more to grow
Mm,
into, you know?
mm. I completely agree. And thank you. I feel very grateful. I think we as a family and others along our trip and travels had told us how much of a gift it was for them to be able to, and it was a gift for us as well to be able to experience this journey with them. And I think yesterday about, earlier in the week, whereas my youngest daughter, Ayana, had to deliver a presentation. They're in the French immersion program at school. So she had to get up and she had made something and she had to get up and do a bit of a show and tell. And she was explaining that morning over breakfast a couple of days ago that she was nervous about doing this. And I had to remind her, nervous is normal, right? But I also want you to remember, look at all the things that you've done over the past year. Remember how that incident over swimming and how you can now jump into a pool, into the ocean without even thinking twice. Remember all the things that we've done, the hikes through the desert when it seemed like it was impossible, all these things. I just want you to remember. And I showed her the pictures and to visualize what we had gone through, just to say that, nervous is fine, but you've conquered many more challenging things over the past year. Getting up in front of your class and saying your thing and describing it, what you've made is something that will seem very simple. And she did well. I mean, if anything, this whole trip for all of us has really improved what I call our failure immunity. This idea of being able to sort of embrace missteps and mistakes and that they have less power over you, right? If anything, our trip and travel has taught us that setbacks aren't failures, but really more opportunities to build resilience, right? And
Yeah.
so I think that's around being able to improve and enhance our travel, or rather our failure immunity as individuals and as a family as a result of the trip that we've taken. I've seen that in my kids and I see that in myself and I see that in my spouse as well.
Wow, that is so cool. And I was just thinking, while we are here, in Paris, we've been riding trains and, going from here to
Mm,
there. And the train system here is phenomenal. It's really amazing. And it's huge. It's intimidating as
mm, mm.
well. So you gotta, have your things aligned. So I'm not gonna really say how many times we got on the wrong train and had to get off and go back. But what I will say is Google Maps is a good friend. And I'll also say
Yes.
here in Paris, their trains, they have like the lines and they have little lights that light up to let you know the next stops, right? So if you know
Ah,
what stop you're supposed to get off and you look on that map, if the light is going away from your stop, then you're on the wrong train. If the light is going towards your stop, then it's all good, right? But we don't get frustrated. We just laugh.
Yes.
And it's like we just laugh. We were coming home last night, and I think we got on two wrong trains, and we're just laughing. We were laughing, and we were also just happy that we could recognize that we're going in the wrong direction. And I think that that's huge when you're giving yourself permission to live your dream, is to just recognize and keep your eye on the prize. Like, what is your dream, right? And if you're going away from it, which happens sometimes, if you deviate, just being able to bring yourself back in alignment, align and adapt are my two power words here in Paris. It's just align and adapt and keep smiling, right? And if you do that, then what happens is getting on the wrong train or making a wrong turn is not an issue. So then you don't really do it as much because it's not an issue. Because even if you do, you're going to laugh, align, adapt, and get on the right track.
Exactly. Exactly.
And we continue to laugh at it, laugh at ourselves, and keep going forward. I know I've said a million times that even if we fell on our face, we know we're going in the right direction.
Yeah.
We're going in the right direction. So we'll get off of that train, get on another one, and we keep going.
Exactly.
It has served us well.
Yes. This is a great place to just ask, what was your favorite like location? Was there a most and least, just not just yours, Charles? I'm talking family.
Oh, you know what's interesting about that question? We get that question asked a lot. What's interesting about that question, Diane, is that we each have a different place that we really enjoyed for different reasons.
Okay.
Yes, it's so I don't feel like we were able to converge on one particular place. I think of Janice enjoying Jordan and the hospitality of Jordan, and with everything that's going on in the world and in the Middle East, it was this kind of alcove or beacon of peaceful, quiet, serene, very hospitable, very underrated. To be able to float in the Dead Sea, to be able to see Petra, it almost seemed as if they had forgotten. There were no tourists because of everything going on in the world in that region, and it felt like we were the only ones there. But in terms of the hospitality there by the Jordanians, their way of being able to welcome you is with tea. And so everywhere we went, they'd welcome us to come sit down and enjoy a meal, have tea, break bread. So she loved that hospitality. I think about my oldest, Cassia, who thoroughly enjoyed South Africa. She is a big fan of The Lion King. She went to go see the musical here in Toronto not too long ago. And so she enjoyed being able to see, as she described, the Lion King coming to life in South Africa by taking part in the safaris and the hiking and the enjoyment of the outdoors that we did there as well. Ayana, my youngest, loved Thailand. She loves Thai food. We took a Thai cooking class. We did a Thai family Muay Thai boxing class where we were able to box and do Muay Thai with other families as well, which was kind of surreal too. But she really enjoyed the food and the cooking class and the boxing lesson that we took as a family. My favorite was the one that everybody sort of scratches their heads as to why you went there, but it was Albania. Albania is one of the countries around the world, I feel like in my mind, is one of the least understood countries. It's what Croatia used to look like 10, 15, 20 years ago before it became as popular as it is today, right? And so Albania is just a bit further south from Croatia, along the Adriatic and Ionian coast seas, and it was sublime. It is great food, very interesting history, people, very interesting story about how the country came together and its own story and narrative. But I enjoyed the stoicism and the resilience of the people. I was fascinated by the country's complex history, their unique cultural identity, the ancient castles, the untouched villages. It was a very thought-provoking stop. And I feel like if anybody is thinking of where to go to next, in my mind, Albania is one of those places where you want to go now before the rest of the world catches up and finds out that this is a fascinating and an exciting place to go to. So each of us had different places, but really at the end of the day, we enjoyed everywhere. There wasn't a place that we didn't not enjoy or sort of describe as being our least favorite. Every place offered something special and unique as well.
Wow.
Yeah, no, that is some. Any barriers with the language from areas to areas?
Yeah, good question. So not really. I think everywhere, when I think back to, of course, Australia, New Zealand being English-speaking countries, Thailand being a large sort of tourism hub, so no issues there. Philippines, most people speak English there. I would say no. Maybe Jordan, I would say, in terms of people speaking Arabic, but that wasn't as much of an issue. I would think that what for me the thing that was of interest that I was interested in seeing what was going to happen was being a mixed family. My wife is Caucasian, she's white, my kids are biracial, and so I was curious to know what our experience was going to be like as a family, as a mixed family traveling through those countries. And if anything, I was a bit reluctant to go to South Africa with all of the sort of history that has taken place there in terms of race as well.
Right.
No country is perfect. Every has their
Right.
issues, but it's been more front of mind there in South Africa. But if anything, it was more, most people just assumed that we were diplomats or expats or what we had some sort of story, but nothing really stood out in South Africa. Albania was a bit interesting because they, if anything, vast majority of the tourists that go to Albania are typically Albanians, and most of the Albanians would come up to us and ask, like, what? How come you chose Albania of all places for a vacation? Like, no one ever comes here, right? People go to Croatia or Montenegro or any of the other European countries. So we got the odd stare, or people are very curious to know our story. So I just use it as an opportunity to tell people our story and who we are and how we fit in and what my narrative was. And people are mostly 99.9% of the time, I think it's more curious to know
Yes.
about who you are and where you are, as opposed to, and I'm typically a glass half full optimistic person, that I take it as a way to be able to educate and inform people about who we are, and for them to learn about us and for us to learn about them. So in terms of language, not an issue, but also in terms of the issue of us being a mixed family as well, we were very lucky that there were no issues there from that perspective either.
Awesome. So this is a great place to pivot about the book, because you were saying how, you want to inform and the curiosity, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners will have similar curiosities, and we only have a short time here on the episode, and I'm sure there's so many stories and so many things that you can get into. So let's talk about your book. Okay, we know what inspired it, the journey, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, let's talk a little bit about the book. Share with our listeners about your book.
Yeah, sure. So when I had never planned to write a book, and I had never planned to actually even write blog posts about our trip. I'm someone who likes to keep, hard to believe, but I'm someone who likes to keep my cards close to my chest. And so when we pursued this journey, it was more as a way, the blog was more as a way for us to tell stories and updates as to what was going on as part of our trip, of course, and letting everyone know the insightful and funny stories that we came across. About halfway through the trip, a friend of mine reached out. She has her own publishing company, and she said, you need to take some of these stories and lessons that you're learning as an individual and as a family and translate it into a book. I was not interested in whatsoever. I wanted to go enjoy the time and not make this a work initiative. But the more and more we got into the trip, the more I realized I was receiving great feedback. And I started thinking more about taking some of these stories, because not everything in all the stories could fit into a blog, and just taking notes and writing my own thoughts and reflections about the experience and the journey. And then when I returned back, I had learned that my organization that I had worked for before leaving on taking a leave of absence had gone through a significant restructure. And so half of the organization was let go. And as a result, my job was no longer available. So for about 24 to 48 hours after we returned, I was very disappointed, angry, shocked, disappointed, all sort of the different feelings you go through. And then I said, this is my opportunity to be able to tell my story. There's a reason why this has happened in my mind. There's an opportunity for me to tell the story. As much as I envisioned that I knew the path that my life was going to be on, this was a complete 180-degree turn. I said, let's take what I've done and translate that into a book. And so I poured my heart, soul, and mind into developing this book that sort of talked about our journey as a family. And so this book called Around the World in Family Days is really around this idea about how the trip and travel, as we talked about earlier, helped to improve our travel immunity through travel, or a failure immunity rather through travel. It also talks about this transformative power of pressing pause and the fact that you don't need permission to pause or a passport to pause that we talked about earlier. So it talks about that as well. And really what I hope it does is that it inspires people to be able to write their own story, whether it be my spouse or my kids or others to read the book. So it's a bit of a memoir to my kids and to my wife as well. And I'm excited to be able to take the lessons that we learned, the experience that we had, the sort of humorous times that we had together as a family, and translate that into a book that talks about those sort of themes of really sort of as a legacy to my kids, as you referred to earlier, as a way to how it improves sort of our failure immunity and this idea of pressing pause on life. And so I'm really excited to be able to bring the book to life. And it's gone. We're working so diligently and so quickly that it's actually going to be launched tomorrow on Tuesday, January 28th. So I'm excited to be able to use the book as a platform to tell our story, and also to be able to use the platform of our story in that book to be able to kind of venture into this idea of becoming a keynote speaker. And so being able to take the themes from the book and go out and connect with corporations, nonprofit organizations, government agencies to be able to share the ideas of improving your failure immunity, the power of pressing pause, and employee wellness and employee well-being, and being able to go on the road and share some of those themes through the lessons that we learned through the book. So I'm very excited, and I had never, if you'd asked me earlier in the year or a year ago if this is where I would be going, I would have said no. So excited about the opportunity to bring it to life.
I love that. And I also love the way that dreams will bring on transformations that you are ready for post the dream. So life can't show you what's coming after, because you have to go through to get through. You understand? So you have to go through it to get through what's coming after it. And it's not horrible or bad, even though sometimes things look like devastation. And what it really is renovation. Yeah.
I like that.
Yes.
You can use that. Free 99. I like free 99. Go ahead.
Free
Yeah,
99.
free 99. You can take that. Right.
My
But
check is in the mail. That's great.
yes, but yeah. And so, I'm really excited. I mean, I got my little money ready for my copy of the book. I want a signed copy, of course.
Of course. Of course.
And the other thing I want to ask is, will there be pictures in the book?
Oh, great. Yes, there will definitely be pictures in the book. Yes, I think this would not be a memoir. This would not be a book that would be reflective of what I would want to see in the book if it did not include pictures. So the book will be available on my website, Charles Achampong, ACHAMPONG.com, all one word, charlesachampong.com. So the book will be available through my website there. And there'll definitely be pictures at the end of each chapter. I've included some of the key takeaways, questions for you to consider what you've read based on the theme of the chapter, and even sort of a pause and reflect session. So, you read a book, and at least from my perspective, you read a book and you're like, okay, a lot of great ideas, a lot of interesting, funny stories here, but what's the so what? How do I take that to the next level? And so I've included at the end of each chapter, again, the key takeaways, the questions, but this pause and reflect section that allows you to think about what are some actions you can pursue today, this week, this month, and into the future based on the theme of the chapter. So I'm really excited about wanting to be able to infuse the things that I want to see in the book, in addition to the pictures, as part of the broader narrative of what the stories that I want to tell in our book Around the World in Family Days.
Wow.
Now that is fantastic. And I might add that your choice of words in your narratives paint a picture. I could see what you were saying. I could see what you had written. Yeah, your selective choice of words. I could see it floating in the ocean. I could see it.
Yes,
I could feel the
yes,
salt. I could taste the salt.
yes.
Yes, very, very descriptive. And to add pictures along with it, wow, I'm in
Definitely,
heaven.
Oh
definitely.
yeah,
Yeah.
I am thoroughly excited. So we're definitely going to have you back to continue the conversation,
Oh,
Charles. We
I'd
gotta
love
have a
that.
part two, three, four, five,
Yes,
six. Because
a
there's great
series.
things coming. There's great things coming, and you've told our listeners how they could order the book. Now I have one question before Charles's favorite
Sure.
question, and that is this: what inspiration, or I like to call it love drops, would you like to
Yeah.
give to our audience or leave with our audience that just goes along with our theme, permission to live your dreams?
Mm. Yeah, I think I would share a story that I came across, and I can't recall if it was a story that was told to me or if I read it in one of the books, the many books that I devoured over the course of our trip. But it's a story of this monkey. So it takes place in northern Thailand, and villagers use this clay jug with a very narrow neck and a wide base, chained securely to a tree. So they place nuts, fruits, and other treats to try and lure the monkeys so they can capture these monkeys. And so, of course, at night, this curious monkey and the monkeys come around, they're drawn in by the scent of the treats, and they reach into the jug and they grab the food with a clenched fist around all these treats. But the monkey's hand gets too large to pull through the narrow opening because of the narrow neck on the base. And so, despite the monkey's struggle, the monkey refuses to let go of the food, remaining trapped by its own stubbornness, right? And so, in the morning, the villagers find the monkey still stuck and they easily capture him because they won't let go of his treasure, right? And so, for me, as I think about sort of this sort of the story or the inspiration of the love drop, as you say, is the fact that in my mind, the monkey's downfall didn't lie in the trap itself, but it was in this inability to let go. This attachment to this prize that connected him to this bigger picture, whether it be freedom, his own freedom, right? And so, how often, are we like the monkey? And the fact that we hold on to these things, ideas, fears, routines, or possessions that keep us stuck, right? And so even though, letting go of these things would let us go free. And so I think about the fact that this whole experience kind of challenged us to confront things that trap ourselves, right? The fear of failure and the comfort of routine. And so for me, for years, I was that monkey, gripping tightly onto whatever that version of success and what was familiar to me was. And I believe that holding on was a strength, but in reality, it kept me from discovering new opportunities and new ways of living. And so, it was only by loosening the grip, my fear on perfection or expectations, et cetera, really allowed me to get the clarity I needed to embrace uncertainty. And so letting go, in my mind, allowed me to kind of fully experience the richness of life and redefine what success and happiness means to me. So that's sort of the sort of the theme that I would want people to focus on. It's a story that I've put in my book as well, in addition to many other stories similar to that. But that's the one that really stood out to me when I think about this idea of sort of the permission to live your dream is to let go. Don't fight it, flow with it, as we've talked about in the past.
Yes, that's beautiful. That is beautiful. I'm not going to say anything because Charles is biting at the bit to ask his favorite question.
And
Sure.
before I even ask that question, I'm going to remember that story. It
Yes.
takes
Okay.
on a lot of philosophical attributes there. Yeah, I can relate to that as well. And I'm pretty
Yes.
sure our listening audience, they want to know more about you, your book, your
Mm.
aspirations. And that leads me up to what is the best way for our listening audience to get in touch with you?
Yes. So the best way, without a doubt, to get in touch with me is through my website, charlesachampong.com. My last name is a mouthful, but it is ACHAMPONG, Charles Achampong, one word.com. So that is the best way to get a hold of me, to get a copy of the book. If you're interested in hearing more about the themes that I've talked about, I'd be more than happy to come in and speak to your organization on things such as, building your failure immunity, or being able to show or talk to you about the power of pausing. These are all the themes that I'm looking to tell as part of lunch and learn sessions or keynote speeches that I can engage with your organization on those topics. So you can get a hold of me to find out more about those topics and my book and some of the other projects that I'll be working on in the future through my website, charlesachampong.com.
Awesome. And we will absolutely put the link to your website in the narrative of this episode for people to, get in touch with you. So, Charles, I just want to thank you so much for your yes. I want to thank you for your time, because it's non-refundable. So thank you for spending this time with Charles and I on the Love Drop podcast. I want to encourage our listeners to definitely go check out Charles's website, and don't just view the website. Let's go ahead and pick up a book. Pick up one for a friend as well, because we here at Love Drop Podcast are pre-paving the way that Charles is going to make several bestseller lists. We said that from the first time that we spoke to him. I am a firm believer that whatever it is that you want in life, give it to someone else. Do it for someone else. It will boomerang and come back to you, but do it with the right intentions. Don't do it so that you can get something. Do it with a pure heart to really see that person win. Because when we think about it and we think about the connectiveness of us as human beings, then we all want to win. So let's all win together. Let's help Charles win. Let's get this book best-selling. Tell someone about it. Let's get the word spread. And Charles?
And give yourself permission to live your dream.
Charles and Diane, it's been an absolute pleasure being on here. Thank you so much for having me on the day before my book drops on my website. I appreciate it. I've enjoyed hearing your story, and I thank Brian Bashan for bringing us together as well and connecting us. But it's been a pure joy having the opportunity to participate on your podcast, Love Drops. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you as well.
Thank you as well. And with that, we will say thank you for listening to Love Drop Podcast. Share, subscribe, and support. We appreciate you. There is no us without you. And we say one love.
Never a second will I waste. Never an opportunity to taste the sweetness of this life.
Thank you for tuning in to the Love Drops podcast. Be sure to follow this podcast and share the love with everyone you know. Until next time, this is Charles and Diane signing off. One love.
Love it conquers all, whether big or small. Love never fails. Love it conquers all.